How are ya? So we are in a little farmhouse, taking some time out before we head to the wedding, just after our crazy touristic stuff that we've done over the last few weeks. We've left Cork, we're settling in here, and I am taking the opportunity while we have a kitchen and Tyler is editing to make laksa. Because even in some of the biggest cities that will have some kind of Southeast Asian food, you can find pho very easily, but laksa doesn't seem to kind of exist outside of like the Southeast Asia and Malaysia where it's from, where pho does, and it's kind of, you can find that everywhere throughout the travels. So laksa has always been one that I've had to make for myself, and I don't usually do that at home because anywhere in Adelaide you can go down the road and find an incredible laksa for $12. So I'm going to be making it today because I have a hankering, and because we got to go to the Asian grocer and find some treats. So I've got some chicken browning in a pot. I'm going to add some stock to it. I told you that the stock is weird here, so I found some really like gelatinous stuff. It was like one of those like chicken boobs that you put when you're trying to increase your cleavage. Side note. So I've got some, going to put some stock in some chicken. So I'm just browning this off first, which the recipe doesn't call for, but I like to do that because I find it's always more flavoursome when you brown your meat. So we've got chicken thighs. And in the UK and Ireland, I find it really difficult to find chicken thigh like we would at home that has the skin and the bone off. But the skin and the bone is on here, and I think for this recipe it will make it all the more delicious because we're really infusing that broth, that chicken stock, to make a good base for the laksa. Using today some unfortunately it's laksa curry paste instead of just laksa paste, but this is all I could find, and I've used it before and it's not bad, but typically I don't like the curry aspect to that version. So I'm using laksa curry paste. We have some decent coconut milk, we've got chicken stock, I've got the noodles, some chilies, some extra kind of oxo stock, and I'm going to make a little spring onion oil, a little chili oil on the side. I'm going to serve it with some pak choy and some coriander. Here we go. Chicken's looking nice and brown but not completely cooked through, so I'm going to add this chicken stock, which is far less gelatinous when it's out of its pouch. So that's the pre-made stuff, and then I've just got the oxo cube. And you'll see that should cover those nicely. It's been half an hour and the chicken should be delightful. I can see that it's nice and soft, so we're going to pull it out of this broth, and that's going to become the base for our stock. Now when these have cooled down, I'm going to pull all of this skin off. You can see it's tearing just at the clasp of the tongs. Just going to pull the skin off and then shred the chicken. You can also see or you might be able to see that liquid has reduced. I'm going to strain that liquid and get some of those bits and pieces off and get some of the scum off of the top, and that's going to form the base of our soup. Pan is back on the heat with some fresh oil, and I've got a concoction here of garlic, ginger, lemongrass and bird's eye chili. One with the seed in, one with the seed out. Add the laksa paste, and this needs to cook on medium-high for a few minutes. Two teaspoons of fish sauce. And we're going to simmer for 10 minutes. And that's it really. The next point is assembling. So when it's time, I've just cooked this a little bit earlier in the afternoon before dinner. When it's time, we'll cook up the noodles and then just assemble because it's all ready to go now. I do need to shred the chicken though. Let's get to that. So you have beautiful, luscious, juicy, tender chicken and the discards. So really, really simple. You could not use breast chicken in this recipe unless you cooked the chicken separately and didn't infuse it into the broth, but then your broth isn't going to be as delicious. So you'll be the worse for it. Sorry for any vegetarians in the house, that was a bit bleak. Rightio, it's been a few hours and we're ready to put the meal together. So we've got the noodles cooking. The packet says 6 to 8 minutes, but I like them to be a little bit more toothsome, so I'm going to cook them for 6. I've got the broth sitting there beautifully and it's slowly heating back up, even though it's quite warm. There should be that gorgeous, like, oily red layer on top. If we had a sieve here, I'd normally run it through a sieve to get rid of those like lemongrassy and like ginger stringy bits, but it's still going to be beautiful as well. You don't need to reheat the chicken, so the chicken's just been sitting here. It'll lose its moisture if you reheat it, and it'll heat by the nature of putting it in the bowl and then pouring hot broth over it. To serve, I'm going to really quickly blanch these in the laksa broth for a minute just to soften up these stems, and then I'm going to put fresh spring onion. I was going to make an oil, but I've still got the that little chili oil that I didn't quite use. So some fresh spring onions and some coriander. Hint, tip, whatever, sometimes recipes when you've got like fresh egg noodles or whatever, you can try and cook them in the broth if you're making like a wonton soup or whatever. But don't with this, like I'm using these thicker rice noodles that you'd find in like a pho or like the noodles that I make, the noodle salad. But don't cook it in the laksa broth because it's so starchy, so it needs to cook separately entirely. Just to try in case you're going to make some shortcuts, which I tend to like to do, but not with this one. Be with you in a moment. Look how starchy this water is. So you got to rinse it, you got to drain it, and then rinse it real good with hot water. That's fine. That's right. So I'm just going to put these in for a minute and let them just heat through, so they're not going to be as raw when they get served up. They only have little cereal bowls, so we've got these enormous like mixing bowls to serve in. But we've just got the chicken that's room temperature now, that's nice and blanched, the noodles in the bottom, and then you just put your gorgeous laksa broth all the way over. Onions and coriander. Chef's kiss. That's so good. It's really rich. You can taste that chicken cooked in the stock. It's like got like little sour notes with the fish sauce. That paste is really like great depth of flavour, and it's really fresh and warm and just the right amount of spice. It's bloody good.